There really isn't anything that Neil Sullivan can't do in the business. If you look at his palette and what he's worked on and the difference of shows and the difference of sports and lines of media, this guy can do it all. And we're going to talk about his story here. He's a broadcast producer, works freelance all over the place with several different networks. And we're going to tell his story on the Onto Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio and also doing live events. We have seen Neil with MAV TV, NBC, from A&E Networks to doing competitions in robotic leagues. And so, Neil, first of all, I'm going to try to avoid being robotic with my question asking here. So I wanted to, first of all, welcome you in, and I'm excited to have you on. And here's a question to start. We're going to talk about your skills in TV, but your skills as a YMCA basketball coach, how would you assess those?
You're digging deep. Thank you, Bryan, first of all, for having me. I've enjoyed seeing your interviews with some of my colleagues, so it's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm happy to talk about coaching at the YMCA. It's one of the most gratifying things I've done. You know, my son was playing basketball, and like a lot of youth leagues, they need parents to volunteer to kind of corral all these kids, and basketball is probably my favorite sport. My son loved playing, so getting the opportunity to coach him was just awesome. We did it for 3 years. We won a championship. It was a real community event every single time. Just wonderful. I mean, I could go on and I could do the whole interview talking about coaching YMCA basketball, but it was a thrill. It was gratifying. It was one of the, it connected me with the community, and it was a real bond for me and my son. So big thumbs up. Highly recommended if anyone gets a chance to coach the YMCA.
From you coaching the YMCA to now transitioning to your career and looking at the different stages that you've taken to get to where you are today, how do you feel you've coached yourself through this process and what that's looked like as you have navigated your way up the ranks here in the business?
That's a really good question. And, it's interesting. When you asked me to be on here, I had to kind of go back and do my own research on my own career just so I would know what I was talking about. And it was really interesting to do that at this point in my career and look back at where I've been. And I would say probably, my career, I would say, has kind of been in thirds. The first third of my career, I don't know that I really did much coaching of myself. I think I just kind of went where it took me and kind of crossed my fingers, which I wouldn't recommend to anybody, but that's kind of where I was. And then the middle section of my career was, I was a full-time employee, moving up the ranks at Speed Channel, and really got an opportunity to do a whole heck of a lot on different shows with different people. And that's really kind of the heart of my career. And then the last 10 years, I think I've been coaching myself the most because I've been a freelancer for the last 10 years. And so freelance work, anyone will tell you it's a full-time job finding your next job. And so you're always looking and always meeting with people and always talking to different groups and different companies. And so there's a lot of self-discipline involved in that. So I think I kind of had to grow into being a career coach for myself much more than I had to as a basketball coach at the Y.
I love how you broke it down into the 3 different stages of your career. Neil Sullivan is with me, broadcast producer, works for a variety of different networks. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. To get to that mindset you are today, where, like you said, it takes work to get work, how proud are you in the way that you've handled that portion of your career? And what does that look like, grassroots, to see the work that you put in to get the work and the degrees in which you go about doing that?
It's tough to recognize it as it's happening because you're in the moment, and it's really only when you have an opportunity to step back and see what's happened that you can really either be proud or understand what was going on in those moments. That's kind of why it was an interesting exercise looking back before this interview, because, there were a few things that really jumped out at me that I had forgotten about or didn't really think too much about, because I've never really looked at my career big picture like this before, but something like this forces you to do that. So I am proud of the fact that I've been able to maintain work as a freelancer. But even that wasn't necessarily 100% my decision. You know, I was at a point in my life with my wife and my family that we had decided we wanted to move. And the only way for me to do that was to leave this full-time position and become freelancer. So, you know, I had to kind of make it work. And I was happy to do that because it was kind of a natural point in my life and my career to do that. And so I am proud of the fact that I've been able to stay busy for 10 years. COVID years have been tough, no question. But you kind of stay busy where you can. And this past year has been great. So proud, but still kind of in the weeds in the midst of it. And I'm sure 5 years from now, I'll look back at this moment and probably see some things that I'm missing right now.
Why do you think, Neil, and we all do this as we kind of inject ourselves into the business and that hustle and the grind that comes with it, why do you feel like it's so hard for us to look back when we're always gung-ho about staying afloat? Why do you think that that's sort of like a common symptom in this business all of our colleagues seem to have?
Yeah, it definitely is. I think because unfortunately, there's not a lot of time to sit back and reflect because your next gig is coming up, and your next gig as a freelancer might be with a completely different company than your last gig was with. And so you need to do some research, you need to look at some programs, and you need to have some meetings and some phone calls. And next thing you know, it's work time, and you're traveling someplace, and you do the job and you finish up, and then you have to do a little post-production and figure out what just happened and what was good and what was bad. And are you going to work for this company again? Are they going to hire you again? And, oh, hang on, next week I'm working for a different company. I need to do this all over again, you know? So it's good and it's bad. You're always moving. It's exciting, and variety is the spice of life. But like you said, it's tough to have the luxury of seeing the big picture a lot of times when you're working this way.
And when you describe, Neil, that third segment of your career, which you are in now, the freelance life, how much more during this stage have you been able to enjoy the perks of being a father when there are others out there who might be so busy and not get the family time that you have been able to experience?
It's been great. And honestly, you know, COVID, if there was a silver lining to COVID, it was that we were all stuck in the house at the same time together, which was, as a dad, was great. But you know, my kids joke all the time. They're like, what do you do for work? You know, do you do anything? You've been around the house for 2 weeks, you know, because sometimes there's gaps between your next job, and then sometimes you're gone for, you know, I was lucky enough to work on the Olympics for NBC. I was, you know, out of the house for 23 consecutive days, you know, so you have these wide swings. But I absolutely, definitely appreciate being a dad during these times, because I am allowed to, you know, if there's a family event happening, I just don't have to take a job that weekend or that week. And you can schedule around, you have a little more flexibility to make sure if we've scheduled a family vacation, then I'm not taking work. That's family vacation time. And so it is easier to work your schedule around family time, and to certainly appreciate the time you have with your kids, for sure.
When you work like that consecutive stretch at the Olympics, where you said 23 days, how do you check in as a father when they know you're working, you know, you're working probably extremely long hours and you're loving what you're doing, but what is the role of the father in that situation?
Well, the role of the mother is much bigger than my role, for sure. I'll check in. A lot of times it's texts. I might text each individual kid separately. I'll do a FaceTime. Actually, this past Olympics, we had 2 Olympics within 6 months, which was kind of crazy because of COVID. Everything got delayed. So there was an Olympics in the fall of 2021 and an Olympics in the winter of 2022. And I actually wrote a card to the family, and I mailed it just like regular mail the first week I was there. And in the 2021, from the first Olympics, when they got it, it was kind of a funny card. They're like, what are you doing? Like, why are you sending us a card? Like, what is this? but they propped it up and they had it on the counter when I got home, and they would kind of stare at it when I was away at the Olympics, which was kind of funny. So I did it again at the second Olympics and sent a card, and they got a good kick out of it. So I guess all means of communication: text messaging, phone calls, FaceTime, and snail mail.
What did you write in those cards?
I wrote in the I took on the persona of a Civil War soldier. So it was all very over the top. My dearest family, I've weathered the storm. The days are long. I can't wait until we can embrace again, that sort of stuff. And so when they got the first one, I didn't give them any warning. They were, especially my kids, were just kind of reading it like, what is he saying? What is happening here? And then they got a good laugh at it. So I did the same thing the second time around. I think they appreciated it a little more the second time.
How do you show your appreciation for your wife and what she's done in allowing you to pursue your ambitions in your career?
You know, she's been, she's been the linchpin for our lives together with our kids. We were engaged and living in Connecticut when I was working at a network called Speed Vision, which was purchased by Fox, and Fox moved production to Charlotte, North Carolina. So we were engaged, and she started in TV and then she ended up moving to teaching. And so we had this big decision to make. Do we move to Charlotte? Are we going to get married down there? Are we going to get married up here? What are we going to do? We're going to have kids. And, she just rolled with it. And so we moved to Charlotte. We were on a 5-year plan in Charlotte. We ended up being in Charlotte for 12 years, ended up moving back to the Northeast. She's taught at my youngest daughter's preschool. When we moved back to the Northeast, she immediately got a job at our local high school and has been in the high school for our oldest daughter, our son, who's a junior right now, and our youngest will be in the high school next year. So to say nothing of the fact that when we started having kids, she left her teaching job so that she could be home with the kids. And so she was home to raise the kids when they were really young. And then she was in the school system with the kids when they were going through the school system. So she has adapted every stage of the way. And so, on my professional side, it's been very inconsistent, a lot of travel, crazy hours, weekends, holidays, etc. She's been kind of the force in our family life. And I can't say enough. And she's not just from a family standpoint, in our community now, she's made such an impact at the high school with other kids, not just our kids. So she's been, she's the rock, really. Our kids will tell you that, our friends will tell you that, and our community will tell you that.
Well, you used, Neil, the word adapted, which she has done. In a way, though, you've used that term indefinitely as we were talking here in making possible the different changes of your career and the segments it's taken on. You've had to adapt to what has presented itself. My first question, or one of my first questions for you in this conversation was how you coach yourself. But having somebody by your side like your wife and noting all that she does in the community, all she does as a rock in this family, but how has she coached you and been your closest cheerleader when you needed it? Because let's face it, this business, there's highs and lows that everybody experiences, and having somebody right by your side encouraging you can be the priceless difference in somebody's career.
Absolutely. There's a lot of doubt. I mentioned moving to Charlotte. That's a big move. We were engaged at the time. That's a big decision. And so there was a lot of doubt in my mind as to what to do. It's a good job opportunity, moving with the work makes sense, but it's really going to kind of upset the apple cart to a large degree. And so we sit down, we have a conversation, and she says, let's do it. Let's go ahead and do it. And it takes all the pressure off of me, and it eases my mind that, okay, we can do this. And every step of the way, when we left Charlotte to come back to the Northeast, and the only way for me to do that was to go freelance. That's a nerve-wracking decision. Sit down with my wife and have a discussion. What do we do here? What's the best course of action? let's do it. We talk through the options, and she's, you ask, how does she coach me? I guess just being supportive, and when needed, she'll present maybe an opposite point of view to say, let's look at the pros and cons here. What are we going to do as parents? What's best for our kids? What's best professionally? And then we make a decision together. But there's always a lot of doubt in my own mind when you have to make a big decision, and to have someone there, to your point, to say, we can do this is huge. I can't say that if she wasn't there, that maybe my career takes a different path. Certainly my life would have taken a different path.
Well, and it was, as we wrap up this conversation, Neil, to think about where you would be without her, where your life would have gone, what path it would have taken. I mean, I know you probably haven't thought about that, but how would you, if you were looking at sort of this alternate reality and seeing where you are right now and what you've done comparatively to what it could have been, and what are the differences that you might see there?
It's an impossible question to answer, because everything we've done has been together and as parents. So, our lives are wrapped up in our kids now, and there is no alternative universe. That's it, and we're fine with that. I'm certainly fine with that, and my work revolves around supporting the family and watching our kids grow and being part of their lives. So I can't even answer that question. It's not even on the map, and I'm fine with that.
Your talents are on the map. Your wife eases you and the family. You do the same, but you ease others when you're in a production truck because of your experiences, your talents, your leadership, and whether it's MAP TV, NBC, the list goes on, A&E. It's a joy to have you in that workspace, I know, given the way in which your career has unfolded and your talents speak for itself. Neil Sullivan, I'm Bryan Fenley. Thanks for doing this, man. I really enjoyed this look into your life, and, not only talking about the work side, but the personal side as well.
Thank you, Bryan. I really appreciate you having me on here. Like I said, I've seen some of my colleagues be interviewed by you, and it's a pleasure to join you here.